going on, guys? Proof here, and today I want to welcome you to a new series. Welcome to episode 1 of Definitive Proof. And in this series, I'm going to be going over some Cardfight videos, either my own as of now, or maybe in the future, depending on how this goes. I may ask for replays from subscribers, and I'm going to take a look at them and go over them and analyze them and see what could be done or what could be done differently, what could be done better. Maybe talk about what I liked about it, all that good jazz. And before I get deeper into it, I want to mention that my subscriber giveaway is still going. It's good until good lord. Until next Wednesday at 10 o'clock p.m. And check out my video where I announced the giveaway. That's so you can get details on how to enter. Hope everybody that's listening now has entered, or if you're new, you enter into it, because anybody's eligible as long as you follow the rules of the video. But as for this video, how it's going to work is that I'm going to go over the deck real quick, and then I'm going to hop into the game where I talk through my thought processes, what I did on certain plays, and what I was thinking about going over the course of the game. So, as always, Spike Brothers. This is my Rising Miracle deck, and if you notice, there's a couple different additions to it, with notably Fierce Leader Zachary and Machine Gun Gloria. I was thinking about it, and like the grade 2 game is really rough right now for Rising Miracle, even with Twitter Run, and I wanted to add more criticals to the deck, but at the same time I liked the draw aspect that the draw triggers gave me. So I was thinking of what could I do to get more crits while still maintaining my draws. So Spike Brothers has a few cards that help you draw, but notably Gloria, which is Counterblast 1 after the boosted unit, which has to be a grade 1 or greater, attacked, and she boosted. Counterblast 1, put it to the bottom and draw a card. And then for Zachary, it's similar, except he has to hit the Vanguard, and you have to Soul Blast 1, draw a card, and then shuffle them back in. And so while these two units decrease my charge count, I get the added flexibility of being able to draw cards off of them. Excuse me. And Gloria especially, because putting her behind a Cobalt Impulse, or putting Cobalt Impulse in front of her, has potential to force my opponent to definitely work hard to guard. Otherwise, I'm going to be able to counterblast and draw 2 cards off of it, and then still get the charge of it going back to the deck, which puts a lot of pressure on my opponent and then adds more cards to my hand. Or if I ever live the dream with Danfear and hit with Cobalt that came out from Danfear skills, give me 3 cards off of it, that's going to be great one day. But this deck is going to change a little bit, because I want to add a couple more charge units to the deck to give myself the highest consistency of pulling off the Miracle combo, but I'm still working on that for now, and we'll get to that another time. But this is my deck here, and I'm going to pause the video, and I'm going to come back in with the game. Be right back. Alright, I'm back with the game. With this, I'm going to be pausing it throughout the video, just so the game doesn't get too far ahead of me like it does when you're just playing it off of CFA. So I recorded the replay, and now I'm going to go back through it once more time. And like I said, I'm going to pause it throughout. I know the shortcut to be able to pause it without having the cursor come up, but just to not make it as confusing, just like if somebody's watching the video suddenly freezes but I'm still talking, I'm going to have this the little play button show up at the bottom and keep it going through the whole time. And so let me know what you guys think about that, if you don't mind it, because it's going to cover up part of my hand. Or if you do mind it, let me know, and then we can adjust it for the future videos. But going into it, like, assuming I don't know that I'm playing OTT, I want to just try and get a 1, 2, 3 in my hand. And so I put back all the other ones besides Millie and Misery, because while Frog Raid is great in my hand, I didn't have a 3, so I didn't want to be greedy about it. And I get back 3 heal triggers, which is horrible. But like, as this game is going to show, you gotta just, in Vanguard, you gotta make do with what you got. So knowing I'm facing Tsukuyomi, what I want to do is, like, if the game goes too long, I know it could definitely turn itself on its head, because their ability to stack triggers at the bottom when I may have a really low hand, especially if they have Tom, like, it's just gonna put me in a whole world of trouble. So sometimes I know most Tsukuyomi decks don't call boosters if they don't have them, and so thinking about it, like, especially the way my hand is, I know I was gonna have to greedy guard at some points in time. So if they do call a booster, I'd risk it and not guard it, or I would risk it and put down a 10k shield and just try to get myself the best chance of early guarding and getting through to my stuff towards the middle part of the game, especially because I still need a grade 3 of some kind in my hand. So with that in mind, I make do with it. And if they hit the superior ride, like, it hurts for me just because it's an extra card in their hand, especially coming off of the drive check. So with this, I see that they missed the superior ride, so they have the normal ride, and I'm gonna lay down my 10k shield because, like, it's an easy no pass there, especially if they get a critical. You don't want to give them that free damage just for living. And so I actually top deck Rising Nova, which is amazing for me, and I just attack raw, not calling out Misery for now, because I want to save that for a later turn if need be. And so ideally they're gonna miss the ride again, because it's just, if they hit the ride, they would have called out that other Tsukuyomi that they had in hand and would have started laying on the pressure on me when my hand was mediocre, kind of, sort of. Like, I still don't have the means to stride. And so they ride to Tsukuyomi, they miss the ride chain again, and they call out their Tsukuyomi support pieces, mainly just being able to get Tsukuyomis into their hand, which, like, I get why they added, especially to feed for Tsukuyomi stride, but I know while doing that and stacking the deck, they may give themselves less chance of hitting the ride in the future, even though it doesn't really matter because they're missing the grade 3 piece. So again, I guard the easy attack, which is the non-boosted Vanguard. Excuse me. And so with this, and it didn't hit a trigger, I go ahead and I choose to guard this one and giving up that last heal that's in my hand, because with Spike Brothers, in my opinion, over other decks, having that damage lead is so important. And so I ride Rising. Like, one thing I could have done besides guarding was taking that first hit, and that would have given me the counter blast to be able to use Mecha Trainer to search out Acrobat Verde. But in my opinion, at the time, I thought it was more important to keep my damage as low as possible, considering that I drew into 3 of my heal triggers, and then bank on the chance of me getting the pieces to greedy stride the following turn, or get Acrobat or another grade 3 in my hand to enable me to stride without needing to use Mecha Trainer. That's my thought process was on that. And so I attack, and they choose not to guard, and I hit a critical off top, which is amazing for me because it's pushing that damage even higher and higher. And so they get 2 triggers, and so because of that, I'm able to just swing into Vanguard, and either way it's gonna net out the same anyhow. So they're about to go into their first stride turn with the pieces necessary to stack 2 more cards at the bottom through Tsukuyomi stride. And so that's scary, but seeing that they have the grade 2s that they use led me to believe that they may not have Tom in the deck. And so that's a little bit of a relief to me, assuming that, because, like, if you're using those, that means you're taking up the spaces that the 8Ks would have taken up, and the Toms as well, because you're gonna want the Tsukuyomi grade 2 piece, the Half Moon, and then potentially you're gonna want to have the Amber Clone. And I don't know if you saw it yet, but this person also used, I believe they used the grade, no, ignore that. And so they stride in Tsukuyomi, they call out their second maid to be able to filter their deck for more Tsukuyomi pieces to feed the stride once more, while also stacking cards at the bottom of their deck. So they're getting to their pile really, really fast, which is scary for me because A, I haven't strode yet, and B, considering that I haven't seen many triggers yet, minus the damage checked ones, it's easy to think that they're piling up at the bottom. So with this, I guard this attack because it's another easy attack. in my opinion, they should have went Vanguard first, because unless you're playing stands in this deck, which you most likely not, you could have hit a critical or a heal and then pass it over to your rear guard. So they whiff on all three of their checks, and so now I'm going into this turn needing to greedy stride. And knowing or having what I have in my hand, the best option to use to stride is Cobalt and the Gloria in my hand, even though that kind of hurt because I would like to have Gloria on this particular turn. But that would have left me, thinking back on it, what I could have done, I think I kept Heave in my hand that's why I kept it. I kept Heave in my hand because if I were to hit with Damphir, I would have given myself a good chance of calling out a strong unit, because at the time that I used this deck, I only had one Dobe. I'm testing out the version with 2 Dobes now, but at the time I only had one. And so I couldn't bank on checking Dobe off the top with only one in the deck. And so if I hit with Damphir, I could have saved the card in my hand, used it, and recycled it for another card through her draw skill, versus using Rising Nova's stride break ability to then call out something else. And so, considering that I have the damage lead, I need to be a little more conservative here, because I don't want to throw it all out at the time and then leave myself with nothing, especially going into their second stride, because it could have been Takumi Kazuchi, aka Sweet Tea, or they could have went into their second Tsukiyomi stride. And so my thought process was stride with Gloria and Cobalt, save Heave for if I hit, I can get a 24k attack off, which either forces 10 or 15k shield depending on their checks if they take the hit and don't hit damage triggers or hit a damage trigger. And then I can draw off of it and end the turn with 3 cards in my hand after I use Misery's skill. And so I needed to counter blast for Misery, so I couldn't use it to Mecha Trainer again. So that's why I didn't use it. And he let the attack hit. And in my opinion, like, unless he didn't know what Damphir did, and wish he could have read it, it would have been better for him to PG Damphir and then take the Misery attack. If he was going to take one attack, it'd be better for him to take the Misery attack, and then he'll put him to 5, yes, but then he wouldn't have to deal with an extra attack coming from my Heave Wheeze. Conversely, he could have PG'd this attack, and then regardless, he had 2 triggers in his hand. So at most, Misery would have been attacking for was 31,000 if I hit 3 triggers. So even if I did, at worst it would have been attacking for 31, which would have been the 2 triggers plus another of the grade 1 pieces. As you can see, he had the means to stride with Tsukiyomi, and then, or the grade 3 piece, and then still use the grade 1 for Tsukiyomi, stride Tsukiyomi skill. And he could have saved himself a whole lot of damage. It would have taken the cards out of his hand, yes, but it's better to be at 3 against Spike Brothers than being at 5 versus Spike Brothers, especially when I can go, especially with next turn Miracle Ace impending, and you can't really bank on heal triggers being there for you. So he took this attack. I hit a double watch, which is fine, still get the power. So yeah, 4 cards, and then I used Damphir skill, call out the Heave Wheeze, which is attacking for 24, which still a 10k out of his hand. And so this is where the PG would have been really useful, because he has to use the 10k, and then it goes back, and then I draw, and then he has to go through Misery, which is going to take 2 more cards out of his hand at least, in which he PG'd this one, and then I can call out Dobe, and then he has to take, and Dobe's going to be attacking for 26,000, which is going to take 2 more cards out of his hand. So I know I won't be able to do this often, but let's rewind this a little bit. And so rewind a little bit more. So he had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. He had 8 cards in hand as of me attacking. If he used the PG That would have been -2. And then Misery would have attacked. He could have used the two 10Ks to prevent that. And then he could have taken the Dobe attack, which would have left him at 4 damage with 4 cards in hand, versus being at 5 with, I can't remember exactly how many. So he PGs this one. We'll go back through that real quick. And then he has to take the Dobe attack, and then he's going to end the turn with 3 cards in hand. So he could have been at 1 less damage and 1 more card in hand than what happened with this particular sequence of blocking, or 1 extra card. So he lost value in that sense, to where he could have saved himself the card in hand and the damage as a buffer zone for my impending Miracle Ace turn. And so he's going into his second stride now. I'm at 1 damage to his 5, which is great for me because I can soak up more attacks now. Excuse me. Excuse me. I can soak up more attacks, save my hand, and then if he attacks Misery, that's saving me effectively 10k shield right there. And so thinking this, as long as I don't draw into a grade 0, I can stride into my next turn. So as I can see here, he has 2 of the grade 2 guys would say on hit, look at your top 5, I believe, for a Tsukiyomi and add it to your hand, and then put the rest onto the bottom. And so thinking about this, there's 2 ways I could have played it. I could have let them both hit, but then he would have added 2 cards to his hand, which is still 2 cards to help prevent me from hitting. But it's 2 low quality guard pieces. It's not like he was adding 10k shields to his hand. He was adding 5ks. And so you'll see how I played this out. But I think I could have played this a little bit differently, a little bit better. And so he attacks with his Vanguard, can't guard that. And he attacks 2 grade 3s and a heal trigger. And the heal trigger is fine. And like, it hurts just because it's buffer zone for me. And I lost the Miracle Ace, or Rising Nova. That hurts too. And so on one hand, like I was saying, I could have let this one hit. He would have, if I let both these hit, he would have ended the turn with 7 cards in his hand if he let them both go off. And what this would have done is this would have put me at 4 damage with 3 unflipped, and I could have gone into Miracle Ace, and then I could have used 1 counter blast for Miracle Ace, 1 counter blast for Mecha, and then I could have got Frog Raider out, and then I could have had 1 counter blast left over to use Rising Nova into, and then I would have been free to do the combo, because you'll see. I'm getting a little ahead of myself. So in hindsight, it would have been better to take both of these attacks and let him get the 2 cards into his hand versus guarding this one and taking the second one. It's hindsight being 2020. Let's see. That's why. I had the skill completely wrong. When this unit attack hits, if you have a Vanguard Tsukiyomi, you may pay the cost. If you do, draw 2 cards and then put a card from your hand into the soul. So forget what I said about low quality guard. He could have drawn into way more pieces necessary to be able to defend himself, because he could have replaced a 5k shield with 2 10k shields off the draw, which would have given him a lot of guard value. But knowing the strength of Rising Nova and Miracle Ace, it still would have been better for me to take both attacks, put myself at 4, and then be able to get a Frog Raider to effectively shut down the guard that he had in his hand, because I knew he had at least 1 other grade 3 through the Uriel check, and so 40k isn't enough to stop the full combo once it gets going. And then I still would have had top deck stride, but I didn't have to put myself in that position, because to where I have to hope that he doesn't last through all my attacks, because like I was saying, if I took the 4th damage, I would be able to get Frog Raider out, which would have neutralized him having all those extra 10k shields in his hand because of the GB3 for Miracle Ace plus the continuous 5k boost putting on to Frog Raider. And it would have been way better for me to take that 4th damage, and then I could have done better with him having 7 cards in his hand versus praying with just the 6 cards that he had in his hand. But that's what this video is for, looking back and then learning from what you were doing. So I top deck Stride, which is great for me, but as long as I didn't draw into a grade 0, I would have pitched Cobalt with the grade 1 or higher piece and still done it anyhow. So with Miracle Ace, you know, it's Counterblast 1, Persona Flip. Whenever a unit goes back to the deck, you can give a unit +5 plus GB3 of Soul Blast 2 and call a unit out after a unit goes back to the deck. And so with 2 Counterblasts, there's not much that I could do without Frog Raider. I have to use 1 to activate Miracle Ace, and then I have to use 1. I have to continually call out Devil Watch to get the unflip to be able to facilitate the rest of the combos. And so that's where having that extra 1 for Mecha Trainer would have come in handy right there. And so my sequence of attacks has to be going into, like I said, use 1 to get Devil Watch, then after he attacks he unflips to put me back to 1 Counterblast, and then use Misery for another 1 just in case I get like what would have been better, which would have been to always try to have 1 up just in case you drive check into Hive Maker, which I learned over time is always like try to have 1 up in case you get into a Hive Maker or into a Misery to call out with Hive Maker. Little stuff like that, little piece of the combo to keep the train going. And so without Frog Raider, the potential of the combo goes way down, and like you can still break through just because they have it at 4 damage. They have to use a PG or use a lot of guard to block the Vanguard, or hope that I don't check a critical, which is why I wanted to add more criticals for a situation like these where they have to PG. And so call out Devil Watch, get the plan in motion. The plan is to, ideally, if he doesn't have a trigger, is just to put all faces or all attacks to face. And I had a really suboptimal drive check here because I have 2 charge units through a Devil Watch and a Hive Maker, and so I have to get a little inventive with my attack sequence here, which you'll see. And so now, like I was saying, since I have the Hive Maker, I have to make sure I keep 1 Counterblast up always to make sure that I give myself the chance to be able to use it. And so he blanks on the check, and so now all these attacks are going to be guarded regardless, as long as he can't guard it anymore. And so since I have to spare Counterblast every time to make sure that I get Hive Maker out, I lose out on the chance of being able to use or calling out Dove with Misery, which is a little painful. But no, that's not true, because since I don't know why it did that, because that's right, because it had extra power. So since I have 2 Counterblasts up now, I know it's a little sloppy, guys. I'm sorry. I'm watching this back for like the 2nd time, and so I remember a little bit here. And I use my axe skill to power up Misery here, and then I use Misery to call out Dove, which I should have called out Dove. We'll see when the video catches up to me, huh? I'm worried about not falling behind the video and I'm going ahead of it. Alright, good, so I'm not a bad player. I call out Dove, and I force him to have to use up at least 2 cards in his hand. And since I still have the GB3 rolling, and since I have 2 grade 3s in my hand, like I'm saying, I had to get inventive with it. I'll call out Hive Maker here, and then it goes back, and then I use the last Counterblast to call out Rising Nova. And the beauty of the way Miracle Ace is that you can call out a unit, then activate the act version or the act part of the skill, which you buff up something by +5. So the unit you call can get the +5 boost from Rising Miracle Ace. And so this goes back, and then I use Hivemaker skill or the GB3 depending on how much I have left. I think I had enough to Soul Blast 2 more, call out Rise of Nova here, and then attack once more. And he hits the heal trigger, and so that's fine. And so let's see, I attack with, I'm just kind of trying to count the attacks here. I attack with Vanguard into Devil Watch attacked, and then GB3 for a second Devil Watch, into Misery, into Dobe, into Hivemaker, into Rise of Nova. 7 attacks off of the 2 piddly counterblasts that I had, which is pretty good, but as I keep pointing out, is that it would have been better with Frog Raider. And as you can tell, in my opinion, he didn't know he had the heal trigger coming despite stacking his deck up, because the way he guarded told me he didn't know or remember that they had the heal trigger coming. And so I would have been able to blow back his hand more with more pressure to be able to probably eke out the win despite the heal trigger, which would have been ideal, because now they have a second chance at life here to be able to catch me on the swing back. And since they're low on their deck here, the chances of them hitting a critical trigger are higher depending on how their stack was. And so they get to be able to use Tsukiyomi's CB2, since they have 6 in soul. They can counterblast 2, draw 2, put 1 into the soul, and so they could have get better units to be able to pressure me some more with. And so what I have to hope here is A, not a critical trigger, or B, I need to hit a damage trigger myself. And so no trigger there, and they have 2 more attacks coming, and I have no hand, and they both have 16,000, which I do get the damage trigger here and be able to intercept with Misery out the way. And so lifesaver right here, right? And so I draw into a blank here, a blank being Double Watch. So I can't stride, but I have access to Rise of Nova's GB2, which is on attack, put a card from my hand into the soul, call a card out. And little gripe, in my opinion, about Rise of Nova's GB2 is that I wish it was a little bit better. Like, I love the free call and just putting a card in. I just wish it gave it power of some kind, because like not every day I want to be able to have Dobe or Hive or Heave Weeze available. Or what if I wanted to call out Hivemaker and let it attack for 5,000 more, stuff like that. Like, considering some of the GB2 skills, like Chrono Jet, which restricts, guard restricts, or gaining criticals or things like that, like by comparison, Rise of Nova's GB2 is underwhelming to me, but it does what I need it to do. So I use Mecha Trainer to call out or to grab a Frog Raider, and my thinking was that I was going to attack with Rise of Nova, call out Hivemaker, and as long as I pull out a charge unit from my deck, and I should have looked how many I had left, but I didn't at the time. If I got a charge unit, I could have called it out and then had another boosted attack come from with Frog Raider finally being around. And so they give me one to pass, and I critical straight through it. And so even then I still didn't hit a charge unit. But I put myself in a position here to where the charge unit would have given me the best chance of winning, because they would have had the PG1 or guard and intercept, and then I would have called out the charge unit here. And so I'll let this roll right here. That's fine. And so what we learned, I'll let it run through once more. And so my takeaway from that game was that, like, if you have a horrible start, that doesn't mean you're gonna end up having a horrible game. Like, I know I had a few lucky draws there, like top decking Stride or getting Rise and Nova off my first draw, like after my drive check. But doing little things like that put you in a position to win better than like taking unnecessary attacks here. Like, I could have taken the first Tsukuyomi swing and I would have lost out on drawing into Rising Nova, which would have meant I potentially would have had the G assist, which meant my game would have been going even more south. Like, granted you don't know those things, but you could have adapted better from guarding that attack and putting yourself at higher damage, or putting your opponent at higher damage than taking that attack and having your game roll more downhill. So I guess the moral of this episode is when Vanguard gives you lemons, you gotta make lemonade sometimes. But that's the first episode of Definitive Proof. I hope you guys enjoy. I know it was a little rough. I'm getting the flow down a little bit more, getting better with time like fine wine. And again, check out the subscriber giveaway. Check out the episode. I'm sure it popped up along the way in this video. And hope you guys enjoy. And until next time, guys, peace. Be easy.